What if one of the world's biggest religions has deep, almost forgotten roots in a tiny, early sect of another? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. A fascinating historical puzzle that seems to connect the Quran to a long-lost community of some of the very first Christians.
Okay, so the Quran talks about Jesus with a ton of reverence. I mean, it calls him the Messiah, a prophet, even the Word of God, and it absolutely affirms his virgin birth. But, and this is a huge but, it draws a very clear line in the sand. It says he's a messenger of God, not the Son of God.
Now, that combination of beliefs, honoring Jesus as the Messiah but insisting he isn't divine, is really different from what became mainstream Christianity. So you gotta ask, where did this very specific view of Jesus, this Christology, actually come from?
To start unraveling this mystery, we have to go way back, right to the very beginning of Christianity. And all the clues seem to point toward this one little-known group that might just be the missing link we're looking for.
So, let's meet our main persons of interest, the Ebionites. The name comes from a Hebrew word for the poor, and these were some of the very first followers of Jesus. The crucial thing to know is that they were Jews who believed Jesus was the Messiah, but they also continued to follow Jewish law, the Torah.
Now here's the key. Their view of Jesus wasn't set in stone. It actually changed over a few centuries. At first, they saw him as a human prophet, the son of Joseph and Mary. Simple enough. But by the 4th century, a group within the Ebionites had developed this much more complex idea, that Jesus was born of a virgin, and he was the Word of God. But, and this is important, he was a created being, not eternal. And that final, evolved belief, that's where our story gets really interesting.
Okay, so now we have a clear picture of what this later group of Ebionites believed. The next logical step is to put those beliefs right up against the teachings in the Quran. And wow, this is where the resemblances just jump off the page. I mean, just look at how direct these parallels are. A human prophet and servant of God? Check. Born of a virgin? Check. The Word of God? Check. A created being, kind of like Adam? Check. It's not just vaguely similar, it's an almost perfect point-for-point match between the Ebionite view and what we read in the Quran. It's just wild.
And the connection doesn't just stop with who Jesus was, it goes even further, right into one of the most central events of the Christian faith. What actually happened to him on the cross?
So, get this. In some early Christian groups, there was this radical idea going around that Jesus himself was never actually crucified. The belief was that God made someone else look like him, and that person, the substitute, was the one who died on the cross. And amazingly, the Quran describes the exact same resemblance theory. It's uncanny how similar the phrasing is.
Okay, so the theological parallels are already pretty compelling, right? But the connections go even deeper than that, moving past core beliefs and into the actual stories, legends, and even the legal rules that people followed.
So, where do we find these shared stories? We have to look outside the official Bible in what are called apocryphal texts. These were basically popular gospels and stories that were read by early Christian groups like the Ebionites, but they didn't make the final cut. And one of the most important of these is a text called the Proto-Evangelium of James. Just look at this. In the Proto-Evangelium, Mary's mother, whose name is Anna, vows that if she has a child, she'll dedicate them to God's service for their whole life. Now look at the Quran. It tells the exact same story, with Mary's mother making an almost identical vow. And the story keeps lining up. Both texts go on to describe Mary being raised in the temple and being miraculously fed by a divine source, basically angels bringing her food. Again, the narratives are just incredibly similar.
So the stories are almost identical, but there is one really interesting, deliberate change the Quran makes. In the Christian text, Mary's father is named Joachim. In the Quran, his name is Imran. So why change the name? What's going on there?
Well, the theory is that neither name is supposed to be a literal historical fact. It's more about symbolism, a kind of storytelling called midrash. The name Joachim was chosen to connect Mary to an older story about a woman who was falsely accused of adultery. But the name Imran, that connects her family directly to Amram, the father of Moses and Aaron from the Torah. It's a symbolic choice that firmly places Mary and her family inside the great prophetic line of Israel. It's a move with a ton of theological significance.
All right, we've looked at shared beliefs and shared stories. The investigation now leads us to our final set of clues, and these come from a place you might not expect: the legal codes found in the Jewish Talmud, a core text for Jewish groups like the Ebionites.
And we are not talking about vague similarities here. These are incredibly specific legal rulings. The rule for how to purify yourself if you can't find water, the exact time frame for a mother to breastfeed her child, 2 full years, even the rules around marrying up to 4 wives. And then there's this profound idea that saving a single life is like saving all of humanity. It's not just a similar concept, it's an identical principle, found in both the Talmud and the Quran.
And if that wasn't enough, there might be a linguistic fingerprint hiding in plain sight. There's a term in the Quran for these kinds of laws, al-Mathani, which appears to be the direct Arabic version of Mishnah, the foundational text of the Talmud itself. That suggests this isn't just a coincidence, it's a direct and conscious engagement with that specific legal tradition.
So let's just take a step back and look at the big picture. We've got the shared theology, the nearly identical stories, and these specific parallel laws. What does it all mean when you put it all together? Well, what we have are 3 really powerful separate lines of evidence. First, a view of Jesus that is almost a mirror image. Second, shared stories that come from the same non-biblical Gospels. And third, these specific overlaps in religious law, and they are all pointing in the exact same direction, toward a deep shared heritage between this early Jewish Christian tradition and the worldview we find in the Quran.
In fact, this convergence is so striking that some scholars have actually coined a term for it: Ebionitic Islamic Christology. It's a way of describing this shared framework that's rooted in one of the very earliest ways of understanding Jesus, not as divine, but as a deeply revered human prophet of God.
And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative question to think about. Could one of the world's largest religions have its origins not in opposition to Christianity, but from within one of Christianity's own earliest and long-lost traditions? It's a thought that really challenges the neat boxes we tend to put these faiths in, and it hints at a far more complex and interconnected history than we ever imagined.